Mashariki na bara Afrika pamoja na ulimwengu mzima, tupo ngangari. Yote kwa mkupuo kila Jumapili saa 12 jioni kwenye kipindi Afrika Mashariki.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking with Weekend Express. If you're just joining us, you're right in time for conversations that we're about to have. I want to introduce you to an amazing woman who is doing, who has a fantastic cause. Her name is Florence Kitsal. She's the founder of Mulika Saratani Walk, and we'll get to know what it is they do about it and how they're creating cancer awareness. Florence, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the Mulika Saratani Walk. What inspired you to begin it?
Okay, what inspired me to begin this National Cancer Awareness Walk of Mulika Saratani program in Kilifi County is because of the emerging crisis of how people are dying because of cancer in Kenya in general. And this Mulika Saratani has a story why it came into being in Kilifi County. The story is about this. This is a story that I've written that based within an account of what cancer did to my family. Actually, I'm actually a survivor of cancer in a very different way. More than once, I tried to take my own life. After taking care of my mother, who had cancer of the esophagus and died after 1.5 years later, I had a lot of debts, and this is actually what drove me nearly to take my life. And that is when I decided, an idea just came to my mind on that middle of the night when I was deciding to sell all my assets, including my house and plot where I was living with my 3 children. And I said, God, if you'll allow me to use my voice to educate people of Kilifi because of cancer, because I've not seen anybody doing it, I will do it. Little did I know that it was going to take me 2.5 years later for that dream to be realized. And after losing everything, I was an employee of Kemri Welcome Trust Kilifi for more than 2 years. And I resigned in 2014 when I was actually in depression, going through a lot of difficulties with my children. My siblings had actually turned their back on me. And I was all alone.
Your own siblings?
Yes, my own mother's children. After the problems came up, and I was selling my assets. I was telling them that the debts have actually gone up to about 1.8 million. Nobody was ready to come forward and support me. I depended on friends. My former colleagues at Cambridge supported me by counseling. I'm a counselor by profession. I'm an old girl, Alliance Girls High School student. And my colleagues came to my rescue when I was about just to go and drop myself over the Kilifi Bridge. And that was back in 2014. I started writing this story, just releasing my stress when during the night I would not have sleep. And little did I know that it was meant to actually to be a book, ready now to be published, has been edited, has the ICBN number, but I lack the funds to do it. So this is the short story of my mother, Juliana Mwenda Kitsao, and it has brought a lot of change in Kilifi County. In the Coastal region, we've been doing cancer awareness walks just to find out. I worked in a research institution, so I wanted also to find out, because after 1 year of working with Kilifi cancer patients in the hospital and in the community, we did our preliminary results and we realized that over 50% of our cancer patients were dying. And this gave us the group, because we actually were about 20 members who have joined me in this cause, and it gave me the motivation to find out in the other counties. And last year we walked from Kwale County to Tana River. This year we walked from Taita Taveta in February to Kilifi again. And in October this year, 3 months ago, we decided to do a national walk because we realized Kilifi County or the Coastal region cannot walk alone in this emerging crisis in Kenya. We need every Kenyan, from the least to the greatest,
And ever since you started the work, how has the response been on the ground in Kilifi? Are people becoming more aware of cancer?
Exactly. And I can actually assure you that today there are some cancer patients, some families who've actually benefited from this humble organization whereby we have no funds. 3 days ago,
How do you fund then the work?
Members, friends, well-wishers. Even the police department actually supporting us because they're the ones who are giving us support. And the reason why we started from Kisumu is because Kisumu County is the champion of the universal coverage in healthcare. And we were actually privileged to be hosted by Rotary Kisumu. The First Lady of Kisumu County, Madam Dorothy Nyong'o, flagged us off. And we've been getting support from also Kilifi Department of Health, our friends in Kilifi, the members, and here we are.
So all this started because of what happened to you and
Yes,
your family, more specifically
exactly.
your mother. Take me back. Let's go back to 2014 a little bit. So here you are on the Kilifi Bridge. You're about to commit suicide because of all the heartaches that you've had.
I had not yet attempted to go to the bridge, but in the middle of that time, I was the supervisor in maternity, Kilifi Hospital, with another department in Cambridge. So we do research in the maternity department, and I was the supervisor. So that morning, normally during the night, I would wake up, screaming, Debs, and I would cry, sweating, but I'm feeling cold at the same time. So this happened after I had my meeting with the field workers that was out that I was supervising, and something just came to me when I was actually compiling my report, and I felt that pain squeezing my heart. And when that happened, I felt that there was no meaning to live anymore. And that's when I walked to a side room and I went, cried there. Then the thought of, let me go pick my bag and my bottle of water, because I was not even having any appetite to eat by then. I was very thin. I was actually going a lot of crisis in my life. And when that thought that I should actually wake up and go to my office, pick my bottle of water and my handbag to go to throw myself to the bridge, I remembered my son who was in class 8 by then, my second born. The night before he had come from school, around 7, we were watching the news, and he dropped his bag and told, Mom, whatever happens, whatever is happening to us, I'm going to pass these exams. So it just came like, a flashback.
Wow. So your
and
son...
I saw him smiling in my mind. And then my heart was, wow, how can my son do his exams next week when I'm in the morgue, in the mortuary? And I took my phone, wrote a message to one of the clinicians, a very good friend of mine, Stella Mwakio, and I told her, Stella, nimechoka. And that clinician, because they knew what was happening to me, she came back to maternity and started looking, asking, where have you seen Florence? And one of the support staffs told her, I saw Florence crying in the dressing room. And that is where she came, sat with me, and made me reason.
So your son is the reason that stopped you from doing so.
Exactly. Then it happened another time, 1 year later, after I had resigned. I had started a business, farming. I have a farm near River Galana. So I had little money remaining after disposing everything, though I had not finished in clearing the debts, and I started farming. And that is when I had bought my 3 liters of petrol. And after I had actually cultivated 3/4 of an acre of tomatoes, and I'd only harvested twice. Then I got a call from Kilifi that a crate of tomatoes is now costing 7,000. That was around December time, Christmas time, when tomatoes are very expensive. And then it rained so much, and the tomatoes were all flooded, and I was left with nothing.
So right now, what inspires Florence? Where do you get your strength to continue doing what you're doing?
God. God is giving me the inspiration, the passion. And I work with the cancer patients. I take them link them with the hospitals that deals with cancer. I walk to the villages. I get phone calls from people because I normally go to maybe the radio stations in the coastal region like Lulu FM, Kwale FM. So I give out my number and people would call me, and I would walk to the villages and actually find a woman, an elderly woman with rotten breasts. And I would actually take the photo, send it via WhatsApp to one of the surgeons in the hospital. Actually, the hospital staff of Kilifi Hospital have realized my vision. And when I sent such a photo, the patient has actually taken to the hospital, done surgery, and we started the road together. So I do counseling. I'm a counselor by profession. And I do counseling to these families, telling them to register with NHIF, do also nutrition on what kind of types of foods they should actually
The proper diet.
Yes.
And this is fulfilling.
Very much. And when, I get challenges, sometimes people tell me, how can you do something that is not giving you anything? I tell them, this is a God-driven initiative, and God is going to make it work.
Amen.
Yes. And here I am.
So now let's go back, take me back when your mom was sick.
Yeah.
She was diagnosed for about, you said, 1 year and a few months.
She came to, I got a call that my mom was sick with chest pains. And I said, let her come. So somebody brought her to Kilifi. And when she came, immediately, you know what the doctor says, an X-ray to be done. And when it was done, it just showed some signs of pneumonia. And on it went on like that until 6 months later, almost. That's when now, after using all the drugs they could do, they could subscribe for her. Nothing was changing. My mother would actually crawl on the floor, crying for her breast, but her breasts were okay. So later, I was talking to the doctor, saying her that they have a history of cancer in their families. Please check on her breast. But there was no symptom of breast cancer. And that is when, after 5 months, that's when her doctor, who was seeing her, Dr. Angela Koech, actually told me, take her for a CT scan. And that's when actually the tumor was found at the esophagus. And by the time of the operation, it had actually, the cancer had spread to a third of her upper stomach.
It was too late.
It was too late. But I thank the surgeon, because what they did was put a tube, I think a stent or something, a tube from the throat to the stomach to help her feed. And she stayed in that condition for a whole year. I was able to live with my mother for 1 year. And I said, that is a plus for me. She died knowing that I had done my best.
Do you think if you had the information, do you think if you had the finances, your mother would still be alive right now?
If, let's say, back in 2012, June, when she was brought to Kilifi, and after even, 2 years before, I came to realize later, after I had read so much about cancer, because it's after losing everything. And I started reading what cancer is, the signs and symptoms, what are the causes, the risk factors. And I came to realize my mother had been having the symptoms of cancer of the esophagus 2 years before she came in 2012.
2 years?
Yes, because she was brought to the hospital in unconscious situation and was transfused. And when I was told to take her for a CT scan, an abdominal scan, because she actually had some signs of blood in her urine, and I took her for a CT scan in Mombasa, and it showed constipation. I was actually shocked. Constipation? How could it have actually made her to be unconscious, lose weight, to be dehydrated, anemic? And she was treated for constipation, and she went back home. But anytime I visited her, I'd find her, she's thin, getting thinner, unwell, and I ask her, don't you feed well? She tells me, no, I'm given enough food, and I even turn it back, Narudisha, when somebody lives with their in-laws, sister, and you imagine that maybe they're not taking good care of her. But that was not the case. Now, when 2012, now when she came back, and after reading about it, and I realized that actually constipation is one of the major symptoms of cancer of the esophagus.
And she had these symptoms 2 years before.
Yes, it's unfortunate that many people today are getting misdiagnosis in our hospitals.
How does that make you feel? Does that not make you feel angry? Because a lot of the people that I've also talked to who are cancer survivors themselves, or are just like you, Florence, they find themselves being victims since their family or their loved ones were. A lot of the stories is that there was a misdiagnosis behind it. A doctor didn't do well or something happened. At that point, were you not feeling angry about the situation?
Okay, at first I got like, why? But later I came to realize, bitterness, anger actually destroys your own self. As a counselor, I know the effects of anger. So what I have actually done is, like what I said, during that night when I said God would allow me to use my voice to prevent other families from going through what I and my children did. psychologically, physically, financially, spiritually, and socially. People laughing at my children, mumeishiwa. You know, they come running. By then they were still young, and they would come running to me crying, Mama, tunaambiwa tumeishiwa. And I would tell them, leave them alone. They don't know why we are selling our properties. They don't know we were taking care of a woman who loved us so much. So just forget about them and everything will settle down. And when I look back, I want to prevent this happening to other families. And that is why our theme of working, the national work, is educate, prevent, and early diagnosis. You know, what happens today in Kenya is people are cutting the branches of this cancer beast. As I said, the book is The Beast Within.
Cutting the branches,
the
what
branches
do you mean?
Artificially. Because we run for screening. But how many are we screening? It's mainly in the major towns.
And there are problems even in the villages.
Exactly.
Okay.
Every Kenyan today needs an education on what cancer is, the signs and symptoms, and the risk factors. And there we are.
Florence, do you think our government is doing enough, especially in places like the villages? And that's where a lot of your work is being done. Leave alone the big cities, the villages, where a lot of people do not know what cancer is when it's ailing them. Do you think the government is doing enough?
Here, what I can say is, you can't say the government. The government is me and you. Yeah? The government is me and you. And that's why I said, from the least to the greatest. The government alone cannot do this alone. We need the NGOs. We need the county governments to come in, the National Ministry of Health, the departments of health in the counties, you know, and the people in the community. Yule mzee wa kijiji. The chiefs. We need the policymakers to come up with a proposal on actually educating the masses. Even the school-going children need an education on cancer. You know, and that is why we are saying education will empower Kenyans to actually make them decide. Because, you know, cancer number one is of their lifestyle today. Like the other day, we were at Kijabe Hospital and we met with one of the oncologists, Dr. Robert Carter, and he was giving us why cancers are so rampant in Africa. And one of them is the lifestyle, Western lifestyles. Today we are consuming foods, the agrochemicals that we are consuming in our foods today. The processed foods in our factories, my dear, the list is endless. So what we are saying is, Mulika Saratani, as humble as we are, we have no funds. By the way, we have not been funded by anybody. The last time I was asking our treasurer how much is there in the account so that to support us, he said only 300 shillings. Unfortunately, yesterday when we arrived in Nairobi, I called our former MP, Mr. Gideon Mungaro, and I told him we are in Nairobi, we have arrived, we have only 3,000 shillings with us, we need accommodation, we need food, we are 7 of us. And he told me, I'm not in Nairobi, I'm in Amboseli, but I'm going to call somebody in Nairobi and he'll bring you money. And he sent 21,000 to us yesterday. Same with Rotary Kilifi, Rotary Kisumu. The members in Kilifi are also doing some collections every day, and they send us.
And have you tried to reach out to the Kilifi government as well?
Well, we did. They know we are working, but we have not yet gotten that fully support. Like maybe the governor knows about the program. He knows very well. And most often, okay, even, you see, the thing is, you write a budget, like he told me last year, that write a budget, we were doing this year, in fact, told me write the budget for the work and also for the book, for 1,000 copies. He was actually going to sponsor this book, 1,000 copies, so that it gets sold, I get money, and I start now repaying my debts, because as of now, the 700,000 shillings that I could not clear back in 2014 is actually going up to 2 million.
Tell me about your children. So back then you had a boy who was in standard 8. He's the reason that you continued to fight. Tell me a little bit about your children, where they are right now.
I have 3 children, a girl named Patience Mukambe. She finished 4th form back in 2015. She's been home. When we were actually going through that mess, she was in Form 3. And she was, I don't think she's that strong enough, you know. And she actually didn't perform the way she expected or what I expected, but I understand. She actually didn't perform very well. But the boys are very determined. And actually, Paul, my second born, the one who was in class 8 by then, got 323. Got admitted at Dr. Agri High School in Taita, a very good school, but I had to take him out of there 1.5 years later because of school fees. Now he's in a day school. He's now sitting for his 4th form exams.
Do you believe your children can have a better life than your mom and than you?
They will, because I'm there. And I'm sure God is going to open the heavens.
Florence, what would you tell a Kenyan right now who is watching and they're in your situation? Maybe a loved one has cancer, they have bills skyrocketing from the roof, they don't know what to do. Some of them are on the verge of depression, committing suicide. What is your encouragement to those Kenyans?
My encouragement to Kenyans, to all Kenyans, because me and you, we are also at risk. Everybody has cancer cells in their bodies.
Right.
So to those who are now having cancer patients in their homes, I'm telling them not to give up. Let the families come together and fight it as a family. Let them not leave it to one individual because they think somebody is working maybe at KTN or Kemre. Sometimes we face our own challenges even when we are being employed in some such institutions. And the families need to actually give the love that the cancer patient needs. Because it is through that love, and that is how that patient